the service experience part. So today basically session is about understanding services, right? Is the slides visible? I know the font size is very small.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
So basically, if you see again, like there can be other services which will be into multiple domains, right? So I cannot say that okay, these hotels it cannot be B2B service, right? Hotels if they start providing to like let's say KT University, right? Let's say we are taking food from hotels, right? In that case, it can be B2B also, right? So let us try to understand the definitions, type of services. It can be generally into 5 domains: business to business services, business to customer services, internal services. That is one interesting concept what we will discuss, and I think all of you know, but we don't think it as a service, but actually it is a service, and I'll tell you why. Then obviously there are public services, be it transportation, be it municipality services, be it our land registration process, all those kind which you can think of, right? Then obviously there are not for profit NGO services, right? And there are few examples around it. Let me first talk about these internal services, then we'll go into move into other processes, right? Most of you might have taken finance or other electives, right? Apart from sales and marketing, in case let's say operations also, right? Purchasing does come under operations, right? IT, personal means human resources, right? Earlier, what used to happen, human resources as a domain did not used to be there, right? There are something called industrial relations, right? It happened because manufacturing industries, they themselves are those unions to manage that industrial relations department came. Then it got converted to personal, right? Managing resources, managing persons. Then they started thinking not as people or persons, employees as resources, right? So and that is the term coined as human resources, right? The interesting part is if some of you have taken human resources, or obviously this most of you are into operations, right? Think part of that, right? Not all of your role. You are basically into a service domain, right? Then the question is whom you are servicing, right? So basically, if you see purchasing, right? When you talk about procurement happens for the company, organization, right? And who is going to use that? Your own employees, most of the times, right? HR, obviously, human resources is for the employees, right? Whom you are servicing, employees, right? And that is why human resources, procurement or purchasing, finance, right? Obviously, finance has 2 or 3 parts, right? Corporate finance, when you are talking about the legal aspect of showing your financials, taking loans, that won't come under the service part, right? But the internal finance, the finance persons who take care of your salary slips, the finance persons who help you in managing your finances, right? That will come under the services part, right? Why it is interesting? If you see the bigger companies, obviously in smaller companies, they won't have resources, right? Where they define internal and external part, right? But in bigger companies, they have under finance, they will have certain people, certain department, sub-department who is managing the corporate finance part and who is managing the internal finance part. Human resources, again, there will be certain people who will be looking onto the external branding part and who will be looking into the internal service part, right? So what I'm trying to tell is that all those specialization you are taking into, right, most of them will fall under service category, right? One way or other, you will be judged, right? Or your KPI will be basically on the how well you are servicing your customers, and your customers will be most of the times internal, right? And believe me, that is the most difficult part. Servicing internal customers is much more difficult than external customers. And you will understand why once you join a company, right? If some of you are in HR, you will be putting your lot of effort in providing those services, right? Still, your internal customers will be always unhappy, right? And we'll discuss that why that happens. So why, and that is something to related to the service quality, right? Why as an internal customer our expectations are very higher, right? I'll give you a good example, right? If our thoda sa, like if you just get into a little bit of squabble, like fight along with your family members, it will hurt a little much rather than agar, if you are traveling somewhere and if you just kind of have a call with some outsider, right? And that is how it is related, because what happens inside a company, right? The employee expectation will be much more higher rather than an outside guy, right? Outside guy, they have many choices. If let's say they come to a hotel, vacancy is not there, right? They'll go to another hotel, right? But inside a hotel, there are employees, and let's say as a HR, you are managing their kind of whatever the complaints, everything around it, right? They don't have any more other options, right? And that's why managing the internal customers are much more difficult than managing external customers. And why is that? Again, we'll discuss that in during our service quality session. I wanted to discuss that first because that is something which most of will get into, whether in procurement, IT, HR, right? Sales and marketing, obviously no, because it is you are mostly will be into external customers, but other domains, yes, you will be serving internal customers. Then business to customer services. Think of examples wherever we have taken services, banks, hospitals, shops, public services, prisons, hospitals. Those are the government hospitals, right? Schools, government schools, and leisures like parks and what. Even the roads, right? Transportation services can become. Let's say if you Bhubaneswar, the bus or the like kind of cycles they provided, right? Not for profit services, right? Aid agencies like Red Cross and all those people who are providing services, right? Interesting part is on the B2B services, right? Think about the consulting services. Think about the like what Saurabh was talking about, the maintenance services, right? Training services, right? Obviously, catering services is part of the restaurant or hotel if you take the contract from somewhere, right? So now what happens, the how customers vary and what are the challenges, right? Think about the B2B services, right? I think some of you might have taken B2B, right? Most of the times who makes the decision, they are not the end consumers, right? The canteen services, right? If I talk about canteen services, most of the times it is being decided by the university authority. But who is going to eat that food, right? Consumers like you are the consumers, right? Customers are the who is making those purchase decisions, right? Maybe a university authority, right? So in B2B services, that uh, kind of separation exists. When you come to B2C services, most of the times, right? It is not that you cannot do, right? But most of the times you have to be available as a customer or as a consumer. I have to be available at the service point, right? Obviously, somebody else can or may order food for you. Somebody else can book the services in Ola and Uber, but still you will be part of that service, right? When you Ola Uber cab comes, you will be part of that service, right? Internal services. So this is what I was talking about, and that is the big concern because they don't have multiple choices because they know that you are the guy. Think about a employee. He will go to a finance person to ask about this form 16 because right now the income tax return has to file form 16. Let's say there are certain errors, right? It has to be happen in that employee has to process that form 16. There is no one else. Employee cannot go outside and kind of complete the form 16 processes, right? So there are certain issues in the internal processes, like kind of providing services to internal customers, right? Because the customer do not have any other choice. You are the only option, right? Public services, again, we don't have much services. Obviously, right now, public hospitals, private hospitals, private schools are there, right? So still people have more choices, but again, those will be costly for the bottom of pyramid people, right? Who cannot afford those kind of services. Think about the poor people in this COVID, right? I was when I fell sick, right? For a simple blood test, they used to charge 7,000 rupees, right? The point is not only like in the bottom of pyramid, those people who are kind of close to the bottom of pyramid, they cannot afford that kind in a public hospital, private hospital, right? No matter how poor the services is, they have to go for a public services, right? Then next is the not for profit services, NGO services. Then these are again two aspects, right? One, whom you are serving. right? And second is who are kind of funding you, right? They also should get, they are not exactly your customer, but they become your stakeholders who kind of, if you see Red Cross, many kind of organization, right? They will have certain religious or the political kind of agenda behind them. I'm not telling all of them, but most of them will have, right? And you will be kind of as a service organization, right? If you are working in those organizations, you will be restricted to work for that agenda, right? In directly or indirectly, right? Challenges, obviously the different service processes will have their different challenges, right? Think about the NGO processes, right? It is not only the managing the processes, managing employees, because you are dealing with the person who has gone through a trauma, right? Who is into difficulty, right? How you are going to handle that, right? Be it earthquake, be it flooding, be it this COVID-like situation, right? Rather than providing the whatever the physical aspect, food, relief, and all those things, emotional services matters a lot, right? And it is not only here, everywhere. If you see, right, lot of hospitals in USA, right, for children hospitals, they design the service facility. That means the hospital itself, because a child when he or she is going to a hospital, he or she should not feel scared, right? If some of you might have gone, I hope none of you have gone through that. But if you have gone through a CT scan, right, they'll just put you into a like kind of a circular shape, and there will be a lot of sounds, right? Any child, if 5 year or 6 year old kid, they'll get scared, right? So if you see in USA hospitals, what they do, they design those kind of CT scan facilities as a cartoon kind of adventure, be it Aladdin, be it like kind of a Tom and Jerry, right? So what they ask that kid, you are not going for a procedure, right? You are going for a adventure, right? And all the designs, the murals, the photos, everything inside that laboratory, right? Where the CT scan or MRA or whatever it is, that, right? Being designed in such a way that the child will be not scared going through those processes, right? Internal services, again, if you see most of the companies right now outsourcing some of their activities, be it internal finance, making those salary slips, Form 16, or in HR processes, the hiring recruitment process, right? Most of the companies are the like kind of recruitment selection, providing the job description, all those things are being outsourced, right? So what happens, sometimes the employee will have external choice also, right? That is one begin to outsource it. Then next is the internal, B2C services. Again, that we'll discuss detail in service quality. And that is one big problem with services, right? It lot depends upon the employees, right? Who is serving you? Which, if you see like MACD or Domino's, right? Not all the shops will be same. Or any favorite restaurant or anywhere you have gone, or the like kind of PVR or Inox experience, right? Not all the PVR cinemas will be same. Not all the Inox cinema experience will be same, because it lot depends upon the customization, those employees who are there serving there, how they are serving you, right? And how to make it standardized, right? So those part we'll discuss in the service quality, right? Because that is a big challenge for any service provider. Best quality service, how to provide across all the outlets, right? And that is very much required, because what will happen, customer might be happy in one or two restaurants, and there will be a lot of complaints other restaurant, other outlets, right? How to make it standardized across all the shops, all the outlets, right? uh, Next is business to business services. Like I said, because most of the times it is a high value purchase, right? How to make sure that you are meeting all the service quality or everything within a minimum cost, right? Because one of the key challenge in business to business services is how much money they are willing to pay for your service, right? Because it is always a tender based. Most of the times the lowest bidder, they are going to consider your services may be world class quality, right? But unless your prices are not kind of competitive enough, right, you will not get that tender, right? So in business to business services, that is a big challenge. how to provide world-class services within the budget the customer is looking into, right? In B2C, it happens, but still most of the pricing decisions is with you, right? You can provide discounts and all those things. But in B2B, if you do not match the price what the customer is wanting, you lose that business, right? That is a big challenge in business to business services. Any questions around it? So basically, we are defining services into 5 domains: business to business, business to customer, internal services, then in your public services, government to customer, G2C, then not for profit services, right? Each of them will have their own challenges, right? Any questions on this definitions? So now we'll come back to what is today's agenda is basically. So we have different type of services. Now what we are trying to understand, what is the difference between when you talk about customer service and customer experience, right? Again, there is next slide we will discuss in few points. Remember the main difference between customer service and customer experience is when you talk about customer service, it is always reactive, right? Reactive in the sense somebody asks and asking for a service, be it restaurant services, be it maintenance services, or you want to install a, let's say, Geo Fiber or a Airtel broadband services, right? Somebody is asking for a service, then you take that action, right? Customer experience starts a long back, right? How your sales and marketing guys are promoting your product and services. So it is not a single point of contact. Experience, when you talk about it, is the continuous line starting from like before customer, when the customer gets aware about your product, right? Think about when Geo launched broadband services in Bhubaneswar, right? Promotions happened, we got a lot of messages, SMSs, WhatsApp, and all those things, right? Starting from that, and if you have taken those broadband services and how each month billing happens, if day to day what you face difficulties, right? Everything is a part and parcel of customer experience, right? So to define customer service a single point of like event, right? You have a today you have a failure in Geo services at any problem you face, right? You made a complaint and somebody came to serve you, right? So that is the customer service, right? Customer experience is how much time that person took to serve you after service, whether that complaint still there, right? So it is the whole kind of processes, employees, processes, time taken, right? Every gambit of it, right? So customer experience service is a reactive, customer experience is proactive, right? So that is why I have highlighted that part. Experience starts from the when the customer. So if you think about those AIDA model, right? Awareness, interest, desire, and action model in marketing, right? It starts with those awareness stage when we get like awareness about the product or services, right? Customer experience starts with that. Think about I want to like purchase something, purchase any services, right? I go into Zomato and the application is not working, right? I have not used Zomato. I've just installed Zomato. If the application is not working, that is a bad experience, right? Let's say I ask for a refund or I ask for a that kind of communication. Let's say I have a complaint to make. That page itself is not opening, right? So every point of interaction, if I combine all them together, that will be customer experience, right? Single point of contact, that is a customer service, right? So most of the times, remember when you are talking about this service operations, right? Most of the times we are looking at a service experience, how to design those experiences, right? How to maintain those experiences. We are just not talking about the customer service part, right? So we are not just talking about those complaint handling part, right? A customer put a complaint and how to handle that. That is not our intent. Most of the time, the whatever we will be dealing in this course is the experience part. So ideally, this course should be named as a service experience operations, right? How to manage those experiences, right? So interesting part, if you see service operations input, if you see materials, yes, equipment, uh, staff is there, technology is there, facilities is there. But if you see here, something is mentioned, customer. We are treating customer as an input here, right? Because if customer is not there, most of the services won't happen, right? In product, it is not true, right? I'll forecast something, I'll produce, I'll manufacture it, I'll send it to my wholesaler and distributor, then promotions will happen and customers will come. But think about any services. Most of the services will start, so they cannot put into inventory, right? So, okay, let me prepare 10 services, put into inventory. Whenever a customer comes, I'll give it that to you. I can make my processes so much perfect that whenever a customer comes, he or she will not have to wait. But services cannot start unless the customer comes, right? Think about a hospital. Patient has to be there, right? Then only the doctor will prescribe something, right? Obviously, the process, the time takes to register and all those things, I can make it smooth. But customer, the consumer has to be there. But it doesn't mean the manufacturing of those pills, manufacturing of those tablets or the syrups, right? Depending upon the forecast, right? Okay, last year I sold this much, and this year this might be the because COVID has happened. Most of the people will get ill, so let us increase the production. That has been prepared already, right? Whenever a customer need, I can provide that to him, right? So that is the product part. But let's say you fell ill, then only you'll go to a doctor, then only the service part will start. And part of that will be that when a doctor prescribes some of the medicine, some of the dosages for your ill health, right? So that's why remember that customer is a big input in service processes, right? So what is the outcome? What value a customer is getting out of your services, right? Value means output, whatever he is getting, and how much effort in terms of monetary effort, and obviously how much time effort. So effort has many dimensions, right? It can be monetary, it can be time he or she has spent, it can be emotional conflict. Obviously, if you are going to a hospital, right, how much emotionally burdened you are, right? Everything will be termed as the effort, and how much output he has got out from your service, right? Output divided by effort will be your value. Then emotions after that service, what kind of emotions he and she feels for your service, right? Judgments. Did your service feel is whatever the need of that person, right? Then intentions. Intentions means in the sense whether he or she will continue next time, right? Whenever, anytime, like you have, let's say my yesterday I went for my bike repair, right? And that is the interesting part, right? So we most of the services are local services, right? If you are most of us, right? Not all of us might, but going for a haircut, right? We'll wait for that barber, right? Regularly who cuts our hair, right? If you go to a salon, right? Most of the times we'll wait for that barber who is cutting our hair for last 5 to 10 years, right? Because we know that he knows our taste, right? Similarly, for a bike repair, I or whoever has bike or if you have car, most of the times rather than going to a service station, right, we go to our local mechanic, right, who knows us and who knows our bike better, right? So that is our intention, right? Each time we take a service, our intention either get a positive reinforcement, that means we'll continue with that service, or a negative reinforcement that we will look for other choices, right? If I go to a repair station and see that every day it is closed, right? My intention is getting a negative reinforcement. I'll look for other alternatives, right? So that is why intentions come. Intention to continue with that service or go for other options, right? Again, like I said, there will be challenges. It is not always true that we'll have many more options, right? So this is the relationship what we are going to discuss, service operation part to provide value to the customers, right? Value in terms of how much output they are getting based upon the effort they're putting, right? So that is the value equation, customer value equation, right? Any doubt on this? So most of our sessions will be covering how to design this part, right? 2 or 3 sessions will be covering how to design this operation so that we are able to make fulfill our promise to customers, right? So that the intention of customer is to continue, right? So any doubt on this? Okay. So this is, like I said, this is the major difference between service and experience, right? Service is basically to questions and concern responding, right? It is a reactive, right? Some
Sir,
problem. Yeah. Go on.
sir, in the previous slide, sir, why the customer is in input side, sir?
Yeah. So that's what we discussed, right? Unless the customer is there, service won't start. Think about a hospital.
But
Doctor
sir,
is.
But sir,
Go on.
customer is our ultimate output, na sir. What we have to produce, it's our internal process and it's come into input. But what we give to the customer, that will go for the output, na sir.
Exactly. So think about a service. Let's say you are going to a hospital, right? You want to
Yes,
so certain like regular health checkup, right? Can that health checkup start unless you are there?
no, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. And
So
that is,
you are
yes.
what? Think about any services, right? Think about a restaurant. Think about the teaching services, right? I cannot say if all of you leave this class, whom I am going to teach, right?
Yes, sir.
You have to be there, right? But again, I'm not telling there are not other processes, right? I can record this session, put it into YouTube or somewhere, and you can always see that, right? But it won't be true for always, right? Doctor cannot put, okay, there are 100 and these diseases, and if these are the symptoms, you take this medicine. Though right now, due to machine learning and artificial intelligence, right, we will get there sometime soon, but currently it has not happened, right? Where you will just click, okay, these are my symptoms. You will provide all the symptoms and you will get a result. Okay, these are whatever. You need not have to be there in front of a doctor, right? In front of a hospital or go to a hospital, right? But at present, most of the services, what you want to eat food, you have to be in a restaurant. Even if you want to order a food, right? You have to order on your own. You are part of that process, right? Hospitals, teaching,
Yes, sir.
consultancy, right? Law, let's say you want to take certain legal kind of advice, right? You have to be there, right? To get that services, right? So that's why customers and most of the times will work as a input. Unless the customer is there, service cannot, because service is something I cannot create and keep it aside. Okay, whenever customer comes, I'll provide that. That is true for a product. You want to buy a vehicle, already vehicles has been manufactured. They will be in the showroom. You want to go and buy a vehicle, but service cannot be done in that way, right? So that is why customer is a input in processes, right? Customers are input processes, part of input processes. Clear? Any doubt regarding?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So service and expense, how do they differ? Because service is mostly reactive. Expense is the whole gamut of services you are providing to customers, right? So happens throughout the customer journey. Customer service is basically whenever there is a problem, you are providing those services, right? Service is mostly into what an organization does, right? Expense is how a customer feels, right? Why we are talking about that, right? Because how we measure that is very much important, right? When you talk about customer service, you are looking into some customer satisfaction score. When you are talking about customer experience, we are talking about net promoter score. That means what does the customer feels about us? Are they going to be promoter? Are they going to promote our services, right? So that is somewhere the intention to continue. How that they might be happy with our product or services, right? They might not want to continue because they know that some other people might provide better services, right? So that is where the intention to continue comes into picture, right? Customer service and event, customer experience is a feeling, right? So that is mostly into how a customer feels about your service and customer services. So that is why right now most of the companies are moving from that reactive domain. Earlier, if you see, you go to a customer, anything, Airtel or Jio, their counter, right? There used to be a huge line, and they will assign a resource person to whatever your concerns are, right? So that is the customer service part. Experience will be when they become proactive. Every now and then they'll call you or at least SMS you asking for what is your feedback. Is there any complaint, right? Just remember 10 or 15 years back, if you think about government services, SBI, right? Most of us or most of our parents will have bank accounts. Nobody will, and right now also, that most of the government banks are into that kind of phase, right? You have to go stand in a queue, ask for the services, then you'll wait for 3 hours, then you'll get the services, right? Think about the new banks, right? You are at home, you'll get the checkbook. Somebody will come and provide you the ATM card, right? Most of the services right now, they are coming to you rather than you going to them to ask for the services, right? That is what the differentiation of service and experience. How do they make you feel, right? Rather than how will they serve you, right? If you go, then they'll serve you. Right now, the situation is every company is trying to reach to customer to provide that experience, right? Service is transactional and quantifiable. Maintenance services, I pay you certain money and you maintain or you provide that repair services, right? Expenses, how much time I wait, how many customer care services. Let's say you want to return certain parcels in Amazon. How many times you have to call to that Amazon customer care services, right? Did they approach you if the order gets cancelled? Did themselves they call you that okay, this order is cancelled and we will be refunding your money? That will be expense. Service means okay, now order is cancelled. I have to call somebody 3 times, then only the refund will happen, right? So that is the difference between service and expense. Department responsible. So we'll look at, so there is a separate, there used to be a separate department, customer service. Now also there are many companies. So whenever you think of a customer, there is a separate customer service department. That company is not doing well. Because when you're providing experience, it will start with your basic website, right? If I go to a website and I cannot know whom to contact, that itself is a bad experience. Forget about customer service. Because when I know that whom to contact only, then the customer service part will come. I'll contact somebody, then I'll explain my problem, and then somebody will solve. Think about a hospital, right? If your location, parking space is not there, the waiting line is too long, right? Your doctor may be the high quality doctor, right? Best doctor in the like kind of world or in the state. But if all these things are not taken care, there is no parking space. It is very far from the road. There is no wheelchair to, like if somebody is ill, he or she has to walk, right? There is no standard process. There is no standard queue, right? There is no appointment. Whoever goes and stand in the line, they will get treated, right? And most of the government hospitals right now is that situation, right? Yes, the doctor may be good. You are providing a very good service, but what is my experience? My experience is worst experience. I know that I'll pay 1,000 rupees or 2,000 more in a private hospital, but I'll go there. Same thing why the banks are into public sector banks are getting into problem. And government is trying to combine 5 banks, hoping that they'll serve or they'll perform better. And it won't happen unless you move from your service mode to experience mode. Why do you think that all those new banks are performing better than uh, public banks? Same thing, schools.
Because of the experience they provide.
Exactly. Think about any services. Still, people think about the private services. Think about our transportation services. Now it is little better in Bhubaneswar. Government buses used to be so horrible. When I was a child, there used to be some buses, red color buses used to roam around. If you go there, you don't know. If you enter that bus, you don't know whether you will be alive or not. It used to be so scary. But obviously, we did not have like in that space in that place. So we did not have private buses. Obviously, you have to go by government buses, and it was a scary experience. Obviously, we do not have that option. But now, when we, as people, customers have options, people won't go for that poor customer service. They will always go for a better customer experience. Right? So we'll discuss about the kind of some methods to measure the customer service or experience, right? And this will be helpful. Actually, there has been questions on NPS, right? Try to understand what these matrices are. We'll discuss about 3 matrices: CSAT, customer satisfaction score, net promoter score, and customer effort score, right? Try to remember that earlier like kind of last year there used to be some questions on NPS, net promoter score, right? How to calculate NPS. So CSAT score is very simple, and all the methods are very simple. Only 1 or 2 questions, right? But what we are measuring is much more important. It is not that I'm creating a survey of 20 questions. That will do in a service quality. So there are 5 dimensions, 22 questions that will learn separately when you discuss service quality. But here all the 3, right? Only single question. Each have one question. So when you measure customer satisfaction score or a CSAT, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied were you with our service today, right? You go to a Reliance Retail, you go to a big bazaar, you go to a hospital, right? They will give you feedback form, right? So at the end, what they want to know, whatever service they provide or restaurant, right? So most of the times we don't put much effort on that, right? We will put good, excellent, because we don't want to spend time on that. But next time, whenever there is you take a service, right? Go through that document, try to find out what they're trying to measure, whether the customer satisfaction or the net promoter score or the effort score, right? That will be interesting exercise for you. Even the Zomato or the Uber, right? After each ride, you get certain feedback from, right? So try to understand in these domains what they are trying to measure, right? So satisfaction is basically how well they perform, right? As a company, how well they perform to meet our demand, right? So that is the satisfaction part, right? So if you see, this is just an average score. Let's say they will ask 100 or 10,000 customers. Out of those 10,000, only 1,000 replied. So they'll take an average of those 1,000 customers, right? So average score, if it is towards right side, right? So if it is more than 7, it will be, that means customers are very satisfied. If it is here, it will be neutral. That means, let's say, if I take a 22 feedback of you 22 students for a particular service, right? Somebody gave 1, somebody gave 10, somebody gave 5, and I take an average of that. Total score divided by 22 or 25 right now, the number of students, right? So that will give me a percentage score, right? So if it is, let's say, 60%, that means customers are neutral. As a company, I have to improve a lot. If it is into, let's say, 80%, 90%, right? Then I am doing well, right? So remember, these are not a one-time activity, right? Every company does it continuously, right? Each month, each quarter, some companies do it every day, right? So that you know that what is going well, what is going wrong, right? So remember that there is a service dashboard, right? Yeah, whenever I get time, I'll show you that. Most of the companies who are into domains, right? So they'll be creating this kind of service dashboard. They will have this customer satisfaction score for the last month, last 10 months, last 12 months. What is their NPS score, right? And they try measuring it quarter-wise, month-wise, or every 15 days, right? To understand whether they're doing better than earlier or worse than earlier, right? So satisfaction score is how satisfied a customer is. So that is a normal, like if it is more than 80%, 90%, better, best, less than 50%, bad, right? This is little interesting, right? Any question on CSAT score?
Sir, total of all scores will be the
It is
average
basically
of
average,
the
yes. Yes, it is basically average score, right? Don't get into this formula, it is just average score. I take feedback from 100 people and I take an average of that, right? If it is coming around 6, so based upon this scale, also it is customers are neutral. That means neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, right? If it is around 8, 9, 10, I'll say that customers are satisfied, right? And you have to compare yourself with the industry average, right? Because that is much more important, how your competitors are doing. You might be 8, but your competitor might be 9, right? So that is something we pay consultants, right? Because I cannot get their data, right? Sometimes consultants do as a external kind of marketing research agency. They do the survey for all the competitors in that industry, and they'll give us the data, right? But at least as a company, we do for ourselves. Most of the service companies do their own service. Sometimes when they want to compare with competitors, right, with the industry, right, so they take the help of consultants, right, marketing research consultants.
So is it not illegal to do that? Means getting the
No,
data without them knowing it.
no. As a consultant, I am asking you, right? So I'm not taking the see, as a consultant. Let's say I am getting that project from any company, right? So what I'll do, let's say as a customer, I want to compare, let's say Zomato, Swiggy, earlier, let's say Uber Eats used to be there, right? Now Neo Zomato has acquired for any local services, right? So I'll go to the customers and get that details. I'm not going to get the data from company, right? That will be little like kind of tricky. Getting the data from another company and selling that data to another company. I am going to the
Yes,
customer
sir.
like you and me and getting the data, right? Marketing research consultants do that because they
Okay.
have access to lot many customers, right? As a company, just think about Zomato. Zomato knows that okay, this customer is using my services. They might not know whether they're using Swiggy or not. You might be using, right? But if I, let's say they give their project to me or any other consultant, I can go and as an outside consultant and I can get those data from Zomato, Swiggy and Uber Eats customers, right? And compare that.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, the
Yeah.
total of all scores, sir, suppose I take 100 respondents, sir. In case of someone give 1, someone give 2, 3, 4, like that, sir, I have to calculate all the respondent scores,
average.
sir, and take
So
the
don't go by. So this is nothing but average formula, right? So average of scores of all the customers what they have given you. You just take the average. Somebody gave 1, somebody gave 10, somebody gave 5. Like that, you sum it up and divide by the number of customers. That will give you average score. So how is your average score? But the question, if you see, how satisfied were you with our service today? Or let's say this particular event, right? Let's say this is a one-time service, maybe, right? Not particularly on today. So this time, how well you were satisfied, how good you were served, right? NPS is a little bit, like I said, we talked about the experience part. So we are not talking about whether you are happy or sad, right? So what we are asking, as a customer, am I audible? Hello. Am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir. But
Sir, your
sometimes
voice
your
is
voice
Yes,
is
sir.
breaking.
Breaking.
Let me switch up my video. So net promoter
Yes, sir,
score,
now
like,
you're audible.
yeah. So net promoter score is, like I said before, customer satisfaction score is mostly into the service part. Net promoter score is mostly into the customer experience part, right? So I'm not talking about, okay, whether you are happy with our service today or last time, right? What I'm asking basically, whether you are going to promote my product or services. That means whether you will recommend this service to somebody in your family or friends, right? And see how, and obviously the next question is why. If somebody says no, we have to get the feedback, right? So the questionnaire will have two parts. First part I'm asking, how likely is it that you will recommend a service to friend, colleague, or a family, right? So again, the score is from 1 to 10, right? And this is a standard template, right? So most of the companies use this same template. So these numbers, again, this is for example, let's say 12 people have given a score of 1, 8 people have given a score of 2. Like this, if you see these numbers which are written just below the icons, right? So these are number of people who have answered in that way, right? There are actually 97 people, 97 customers who have said, yes, definitely they are going to promote or tell about your product or services. 115 have given a score of 9, right? So 9 and 10 means promoters, 7 and 8 means passive, that means neutrals. 1 to 6 is detractors, that means they have a very bad experience, right? And it is overall experience. It is not about the customer service department. Think about a hospital. The customer service, that means the doctor who is providing that service, excellent, but there is no parking space. There is a long queue, right? So everything kind of combined is your customer's experience, right? So how is it being calculated? I'll take number of promoters. How many promoters I have? I have around 61.5% promoters. How did I get this number? I add this total number 115 plus 97, that is 212. 212 by 345. 345 is my total number of customers. So I have total, the survey I have taken, I have total 345 customers, right? So if I divide 212 by 345, that will give me 61.5%. That means around 61.5% customers will promote my service, right? Similarly, there are 40 customers. If I add all these up, 12, 7, 1, 8, 12, right? These many customers have given these ratings, right? 1 to 6. So there are 40 detractors, right? Then passive, basically we don't consider the number of passive, whatever it is. So that means they are neither dissatisfied nor satisfied with our overall experience, right? So neither this way nor that way, right? So first, net promoter score is being calculated as percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractors. So 61.5 percentage minus 11.6 percentage, around 49.9. That means 50, right? So what I mean to say is that around 50 percentage of my customers will promote my product or services, right? So that is the meaning of net promoter score. But we do not stop there. Second question is why, right? So these detractors or the, let's say, these passives, we generally ask that why do want you promote our product or services, right? So in that case, whatever feedback they give, right, we have to work on that. Again, it is a continuous process. Most of the times it is done like yearly twice, right? So that means every 6 months. So for the last 5 years, if I've done 10 NPS survey, some of you, if I've done internship, one of the like kind of projects generally they give to calculate this NPS score, right? For the banks, for the service institutions, you can calculate this NPS score, right? So every 6 months, if you calculate this score and find out that how your company is doing, right? So that is about NPS, Net Promoter Score, and you have to work on this feedback, right? Any doubt on the calculation part? How we reach in this 50 number? So basically, we ignore this passive part. We generally calculate the promoter percentage minus detractor percentage, right? So that is our overall people, overall customers who are going to promote our product, right? So this is known as net promoter score.
So,
Yeah.
so this NPS value can be negative, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah,
sir, the CSAT, so can the CSAT value be negative?
No, because that is average score and we are
No.
starting with 1, right? If your score starts with negative, right? If not satisfied is -5, there is a chance that it can be negative. Because if you go back, see, where is that? The starting point is 1 to 10. Some companies do it from -5, neutral is 0, +5 is positive, right? In that case, it can be negative. But generally, most of the companies follow this process 1 to 10. They don't get into negative part. -5 to +5. But actually, if you're doing that is a good thing because that actually shows there are people who are dissatisfied with your service. Because see, there the mentality change is happening. When you get a negative score, it might happen in NPS. Definitely, if your service is very poor, see, because see, any number between 1 to 6, that person is distracted. There is a greater chance that you will have this percentage much more than this. People scoring 9 and 10. So this is why this score is kind of eye opener. If you just remember this is -10 or -20 percentage, that means there are many more detractors than promoters. So you have to work on that feedback. Because negative score always shows, like if I put a negative score, it always the management starts thinking about it, right? But if it is a positive score, no matter how small it is, right? People will think that, okay, we have got a 2 score, it is bad, we'll work on that. But think about it, if it is -20, -30, so it suddenly like kind of starts, makes you think we are doing something very wrong. Then you'll start working on that feedback. Yes, to answer your question, that is a good question. NPS can be negative also, depending upon number of detractors. And there are companies who start with negative and then moves into positive, working on those feedback.
So during my SIP, I had done a project where I had calculated this NPS score of top 3 magazines of India, but so I got all of them negative values. So, but one of them company India Today is going fine. So, is there any buy?
So again, like I said, all of these scores what you are getting, you have to compare with your competitors. Let's say 3 ABC magazines, right? You are from C India Today or whichever company, right? You get a negative score of -10. Other two companies have got -14, -30 or something like that, right? So you are doing better than your competitors, but that doesn't mean that you are happy, right? Because people are not promoting your product. People are still dissatisfied, and you have to work on that feedback. So that's why all these scores what we are discussing, we have to compare with our competitors. And yes, it is true that all 3 or 4 of them can be in negative, right? Because there is a greater chance to be in negative. Because see, in the range, if I just throw a like kind of randomly rate, most of the people will be in this range, right? Very few people will be in. So in this example, I have just shown you it is a very good number, 50. But generally it happens most of the people will rate in this 1 to 8. And very people, unless that is your service is very excellent, right? 9 and 10, right? And that is where explaining this question to a and online, that is a problem, right? So explaining that question to a kind of a customer is also very much required. Getting that feedback, because in online survey, what happens? I'll give a rating of 5, but I'll not give my feedback why I'm giving 5. But if you're doing it face to face, I can always ask, sir or madam, you have given a rating of 5. May I know that what can be done to improve our customer experience, right? So that's why NPS ideally we should take face to face. But again, like depending upon the challenges, people do take online. But to your answer your question, yes, all the competitors can be negative. So in that case, you have to say who is less negative, right? So in your case, if you're less negative than your competitors, then you might be in a better position. Was that your question?
Yes, yes, sir.
But yeah, your NPS score can be negative, and it happens a lot. Next is customer effort score. This it is about the time, the effort he puts, right? The person puts to take the service. Think about any services, customer care services. We have to be in call for 10 or 15 minutes, right? And I have encountered many times, and you might have encountered, right? For simple services, we have to call 10 or 15 times, then only you'll get those services, right? So that is the effort part. So score is simple. Again, when you talk about customer effort score, right? You just take an average, right? Sum of all customer effort score divided by total number of responses. That is the average score, right? Lower the better, right? If so, because we are measuring the effort, less effort is always better, right? If it is, let's say 2, 2.5, 1.5, right? If the average score comes like that, right? So that means you are serving your customers better way, right? Customer is putting less effort to acquire your services, right? It can be in terms of time they spend or the amount of kind of, let's say it is a hospital. It is very close to the main road, right? The effort will be for a customer will be very less. But if it is in a remote place, effort will be much more, right? So think in that way, right? Another way to calculate is we calculate something called net EG score. It is similar to NPS, right? If you remember what we did, percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractors, right? So here we ignore the neutral part. We calculate how many people are telling this as EG. So how many people have scored here, 1 or 2? How many people have scored 5.67? Then we percentage people who have told it is easy to get our service minus percentage people who have told it is difficult, right? That will give us the net EG score, right? Again, it can be negative if people who find our services are easy. Let's say it is only 10%, 10% difficulty is 40. That means it can be negative. But this score cannot be negative because this is just an average, right? 1 to 7. But first, so that's why the net EG score is a better representative, because how many people find it easy in comparison to how many people find it difficult to get our services, right? So generally, most people, most companies just calculate the average, but it is always better to calculate the net EG score, right? To understand the ratio between the difference between percentage EG and percentage difficult. Is this part clear? Any doubt on this? It is similar to NPS score when you talk about net EG score. So there percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractors. Here, how many people find to get our service easy? How many people find it difficult to get our service? Right? Any questions on this? Okay. So now we'll talk about the service experience landscape, right? So there are two axes if you see X and Y, X-axis we talk about customer participation, Y-axis we talk about the environmental setup, right? Let us try to understand it. What do you mean by customer participation? Customer participation means how involved the customer is in taking that service, right? It can be passive, it can be active, right? Then environmental relationship or environmental setup is absorption and immersion, right? Absorption is somewhere you have to get acquainted, be in that setup to get that service. Immersion is that setup all the processes in a such a way that the customer, if customer is not that, that service won't happen, right? Customer is like kind of, think about a 5-star restaurant, right? Think about, like in this case I've given example of scuba diving, right? Customer is the big beneficiary, I'll not say big beneficiary, biggest stakeholder rather than the employee, right? So immersion in that sense, right? So let us try to understand through examples, then it will be a little better. Start with this one, absorption and passive, right? Think about going to a movie hall, right? You buy ticket, you stand in a queue, you buy popcorn, right? Once the movie starts, and I'm not just talking about the like kind of a, what will say, only the movie starting, standing in the queue is also expense, buying the popcorn, how costly the movie ticket, everything is a part of expense, right? But at the end, what happens? You are being like seated passively, right? You are watching that movie for 2 to 3 hours, right? So this is the part of absorption, right? There is a screen, whatever the like kind of a smaller screen, bigger screen, that can be like kind of designed. But you as an entity separate, as a customer, you are separate from that entity, right? Obviously, right now a lot of 3D and 4D, and we are talking about 7D, right? Then it will get into this immersion part, right? Then we'll see. I'll take this example and we'll try to understand how that can be immersive, right? So in absorption, what happens? There is a clear boundary between customer and the setup. The screen is different. You as a customer, you might be, so sometimes people talk about, I was so engrossed in that movie that I did not know suddenly 2 hours is over, right? Sometimes it might happen, but still what happens, there is a clear boundary. This is a movie screen and you are a customer, so that is the absorption part. Think about immersion. You are still a passive activity, you are just roaming around, right? As a tourist, wherever you go, right? Temple, whatever, like kind of just for the sightseeing visit, right? Again, tourist can be different, adventure tourism will be different. So in that case, what happens? The setup is there, you are entering that setup. Just imagine the difference. In the movie screen, what used to happen? There is a clear boundary between that. Go to any temple, go to any tourist places, right? The setup is already there. The person is entering that setup, right? So if I want to change my movie experience to a immersive experience, what I can do? So right now, if you see 3D experience or a 7D experience, right? Customer is being part of that setup. Customer is not a separate to that setup, right? Customer is still passive. Customer knows that he is not taking, he is not doing any actions there. He's just a passive. He's just viewing that. Right? Passive means he's just an observer. Active means you are participating there, right? So if I change my movie theater experience to a immersive experience, how can I do that? So a lot of if you see movie also moving into that 3D, 4D, and some movie also are getting into 7D experience. So in that case, what happens? The setup is that customer is entering that setup. That will be immersive experience, right? When you talk about customer participating in the activity, right? Active education. Right now we are teaching. I am teaching. You can be passive. Okay, teacher को जो बोलना है बोलने दो. We just have to take the attendance 1.5 hours. It can be passive or it can be active. If you actively participate, ask questions, answer questions, that will be active, taking participation in that service. Then last one is immersive active experience. Think about scuba diving, bungee jumping, any kind of biking in like kind of mountains, right? So just think about, customer cannot be a passive follower of that. The setup is there. He has to participate. He has to participate in scuba diving, bungee jumping, or any other services, right? In that case, like swimming, right? Otherwise, it won't be a service. It won't be called as an experience, right? So that is how we define. So when you talk about absorption, immersion, that absorption, there is a boundary between customer and service setup. Right? Immersion, customer is entering the service setup. There is no boundary as such, right? Passive and active. Passive is customer is just an observer. Any service like education right now in front of online class, you can be passive also, you can be active also, right? Education would ideally try to be active, right? Education can be also immersive, right? Think about a setup, right, where you go and design, let's say engineering labs, right? Vehicle design, we can do it those 3D kind of setup where you go to a virtual visit to a plant, right? We put those 3D glasses and you go and work in assembly line, right? Do you know that you calculate how much time it is taking to assemble a car? If I put you a 3D glass and I put you into that experience of a going into assembly line and working in that assembly line, that will be immersive experience because that boundary I have taken away. Right now, what happens? Still a boundary is there. You might be active participant, but there is a screen. You know that okay, there is a boundary between us, right? The screen, even in a offline classes also, right? I am telling something. There is a communication. You are receiving something, right? You are observing something. But immersive will be if the setup is such a way that you forget about that there is a separate setup, right? You are participating in that, right? Think about the like kind of in some like MIT and some very good engineering schools, they have this kind of 3D labs, right? Where they'll give you this 3D or 4D glasses, right? Where you'll get into that lab experience and you will imagine yourself being there, right? So that will be immersive education experience, right? So that is how we define service experience. Any question or doubt on this?
Sir, that immersion part and that, so can you please explain that how can tourist be an immersion part?
Yeah, think about any tourist place, right? So there is no boundary as such, right? You don't watch a tourist place from outside. Okay, this is like a tourist place. I'm watching outside. You go, you enter that place. Let's say you go to Ladakh, Leh, or let's say Goa, right? If I say that okay, I'm going to Goa for a vacation, right? You enter that place. You go to churches. You go to like whatever places, beaches, or anything, any place you want to go, right? So you are entering that setup, right? So that is the immersive part. I'm not standing outside and watching that, which happens in a movie hall. You are sitting separate, there is a screen and you are watching that. You can do that for tourists also. Most of us, if you cannot, let's say in COVID time, what you do basically? We will be watching like different, like, and there are many TV channels who show those programs, right? So tourism can be a absorption and passive also. I just can sit outside as a viewer and look into that African, let's say, jungles and all those things. Right? But if I go to Masai Mara and be part of that setup, right, that will be immersion. I'm just watching from my laptop or a kind of a screen, okay, how the African jungle life is. That is just absorption. That is the boundary between me and that setup. But if I go there physically, be part of that experience, that will be immersion. So immersion means the boundary generally we try to ideally like kind of we try to remove or we try to make that experience so immersive that that's a 3D experience, right? That can be immersive, right? You don't see that as a boundary. Otherwise, if I say, okay, African jungle safari, you just watch a movie on documentary on African jungles. That is just passive and absorption, right? You are just watching that. But if I put you those 3D glasses, 7D experience, right? You will be part of that. You will not think yourself as a different than that setup. You are part of that setup. That will be immersive. So immersive means that boundary you try to remove. Either actually we remove, that means you actually go to that place, or virtually. Virtually means I put you those setup, 7D setup where you feel that you are already there, right? Did I clarify your doubt?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other questions around?
Sir, passive participation, I couldn't understand, sir.
Passive means you are
and
just
immersion.
passive means you are just an observer.
Okay, sir.
You just go for a sightseeing, right? Tourism here, I mean. So scuba diving is also tourism. Mountain, like kind of if you go for a mountain biking is also tourism part, right? But there you are active participant.
Are all kind of adventure sport which
Adventure.
comes under
Yes. Yes.
escapism.
Uh, yes. If you go there and be part of that experience, right? Active participant. Escape. Yes. You are escaping the day-to-day reality and be part of that other. That is the escape. All adventure tourism where you are taking the active participation, be it scuba diving, bungee jumping, mountain biking, all will be you are part of that setup, right? You are just not watching from outside. You are not the observer. So you are active and you are entering that setup, right? That will be both immersive and active participation. Immersive setup and active participation. So immersive means there is no boundary between you and the service setup or the experience setup. Like I said, that can be done actually if you go there. And right now, people are trying to do it virtually also, right? Giving you those, you might be at home, you have a 7D experience as that you are feel like you are there, right? That can be also done. So virtually, you can remove those boundaries. But as of now, mostly we think of practically removing that boundary rather than you watching those jungle safari movies. You go there and let's say take a safari there, right? That is an immersive experience. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So there are certain examples how like companies have started doing that. Again, I have taken this from the book textbook, right? And many it is not only about that Las Vegas, many like kind of setups being do that, right? So these forums of across Las Vegas, what they do, they talk about the kind of Greek like kind of very premium products, right? So their setup is basically where they have shown, like if you see the picture, right? So it is all like kind of ancient Greek buildings, the kind of images, the setup, the walking path, everything will be like kind of be like a Greek culture, right? Because most of their products are basically into high-end kind of showing up that ancient culture, right? So that's how you build that theme, right? So this is known as the themed experience. Whatever I'm trying to sell, my setup will be
The voice
almost.
is breaking.
Okay.
So your voice is breaking.
Am I audible now? Hello. Am I audible now? Is it better? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, am I audible now? Sorry, I got disconnected.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Where was I? So we are talking about this first principle, theme the experience, and what is that restaurant corporate name? In India also.
Again, your voice is breaking.
Hello, am I audible? Just give me a moment.
Yes, sir. But your voice is breaking sometimes.
Is it better now? Hello.
Yes, sir.
So I think Barbecue Nation does that, right? So they have that kind of theme experience when the waiters or the managers wear those kind of caps or the costumes, right? Depending upon the day, right? So that is basically as a customer you will feel that, right? In Bangalore, there are few restaurants who like people will be wearing those tongas. Mexicans wear those tongas, right? So those kind of experience they provide to team the experience. Second is you provide the positive cues. Think about this. This is a good example. Parking space, right? This is a big airport, right? Around few million square feet of parking space. It will be very difficult for a customer to go there and find his vehicle, right? His or her vehicle if you are parked there, right? So what they do, for each floor, they have a separate color, right? And so this is just a parking like kind of area. So these buildings, whatever you see, 4 or 5 floors of parking. So each floor will have a different color, and each floor will have a different music. So now what happens? You know that okay, third floor, this section, because when you are parking, some music will be playing, right? Classical, jazz, rock, pop. So you have that cue and the color cue, right? So basically, it helps us the customer when coming back and finding the exact parking space, right? Where he or she has parked the car. So that is about harmonizing impressions with positive cues. Positive cues in this case are the color of the space, color of the floor, and the music they play kind of in those particular floor, particular area. Next is eliminate negative cues. Most of the times we throw kind of our like kind of not in the proper dustbins, right? Garbages across in a cinema hall, in a movie hall theater, right? We throw here and there. There are two ways to do it, right? So anytime we are throwing products here and there will be a negative cue saying don't throw there. There can be like a voice impression. Or whenever actually we are doing a good activity, right? We are putting a in the dustbin, right? So that will be like eliminate negative cue. It will show thank you for using me or thank you for putting the garbage in proper place, right? Some of the cinema halls in USA do that, right? There are dustbins where if you put, there will be actual voice message which you play. Thank you for like using the dustbin properly, right? Experience the mix in memorabilia. That means if you see Hard Rock Cafe, right, or the big kind of events which happen, right? Now what they happen, they sell you products also, their t-shirts, their coffee mugs, right? So event is, there is a event, Hard Rock event, or there is a, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought I lost. So basically, if you go to that event, there will be always t-shirts, coffee mugs to buy, right? So that is basically you are asking the customer to buy those products, t-shirts, coffee mugs, or some memorabilia, right? To remember the event, to remember the service they provided, right? So that is something, right? Mix in memorabilia, right? Hard Rock Cafe does a lot. One of the biggest revenue for that coffee chain, right? Hard Rock restaurant, right? Is because people generally maybe sometimes they'll go once in a year or once in two, like kind of 2 or 3 years, but they generally buy these kind of products to show to their friends that okay, I went there, right? I went to that event. Most of the rock concerts, right? If you go to Goa, most of the time they'll be selling this t-shirt, and that is a big business for them because we come back and show that okay, I was part of that event or I was part of that experience, right? Then engage all 5 senses. Here I was just talking about the movie hall experience, moving to a right now from 3D to 4D, later on to a 7D experience, right? So there is a cafe here in Las Vegas, right? So they have this rainforest thing. So if you go and dine there, there will be mist around, there will be sounds like kind of, you will feel like you are in a jungle and dining there inside a jungle, right? So all the setup is like kind of a jungle, like kind of giving you that experience of a rainforest, right? So these are few of the again examples. Not necessarily we can apply everywhere, right? Depending upon the effort, depending upon the time we have, right? We have to like kind of optimize our services, right? So basically, what we need to ask ourselves whenever we are designing any services, right? What is the existing offering like for our customers so that we can get from our either a CSAT score or a NPS score or a CS customer effort score. What our competitors offerings like. Sometimes we appoint consultant, outside consultants to get those information, provide that to us. Generally, it is not publicly available, this kind of information, internal service data. Right? So we kind of take the help of marketing research agencies to do those surveys for our customer competitors and give us details. Then we compare ourselves with our competitors. We also get the feedback in case there are negative 30%, minus 30% is your NPS score. That means there are many detractors. What is their feedback? Why won't they promote our product or services? Right? What frustrations do customers have in relation to this product or service? Right? That is again from the feedback form. When if you see in the NPS, the second question is why. If somebody is saying they will not promote our product or scoring less, 1 to 6, or be it is a passive neutral customer. So we generally ask why. Why won't you promote our product or services? We work on those frustrations, right? Have they been delighted before by similar services and offerings? How and why, right? Sometimes it is better to ask them like a follow-up question is that is there anything any of our competitors doing better service than us, right? Again, it cannot happen in online survey kind of thing. It has to be face-to-face, personal interviews, focus group discussions, right? Qualitative interviews, right? So basically, these questions gives us idea how we can improve our service experience for our customers, right? So this is basically the experience design principles. There is something called design thinking. So I'll take that as a workshop and we'll do certain exercise on that. But that is maybe after 7 or 8 sessions, right? So there is something called design thinking principle. There are 5 steps. We'll learn that together, but just wait for that.